She got the ballet lessons, the birthday parties, the new car at 16. I got the hand-me-downs and a mom who said, "You're older, you understand." I understood a lot of things growing up. I understood that my younger sister was the one who cried prettiest and got what she wanted. I understood that when she broke my things, it was an accident, but when I lost my patience, it was a character flaw. I understood that in our house, there was one daughter who mattered and one who was just there. Useful, reliable, easy to overlook. Her name is Noelle. And for most of my life, I told myself that was just how families worked. That someday it would even out. That my parents loved us equally, just differently. I held on to that idea the way you hold on to something fraying, gently, carefully, because you're afraid of what happens if you let go. I'm 31 now, and I finally let go. Here's how it started. My sister got engaged 2 years ago to a guy she'd been dating for 8 months. My parents lost their minds with excitement. My mom cried. My dad shook his hand like he'd just closed a business deal. I stood in the living room of my childhood home holding a glass of sparkling cider, smiling until my face hurt, and nobody looked at me once. That was fine. I was used to it. What I was not used to was what came 3 months later when my sister called me, not to catch up, not to ask how I was doing, but to tell me she needed money. The venue deposit was $4,200. She didn't have it. Their joint account was complicated right now. Her words, and our parents had already helped with the ring. She said it like that, like it was obvious I would step in, like that was my role. I had been saving for 2 years to put a down payment on a small condo. I had spreadsheets. I had a timeline. I had worked 60 hours at my accounting job and eaten a lot of sad desk lunches to make that money exist. But she was my sister, and I genuinely thought, that doing this would mean something, that she would see me differently, that maybe this would be the moment we became close in the way I'd always wanted us to be. So I transferred the money. She texted back a single emoji, a heart. Over the next several months, I became the unofficial wedding financier. It happened so gradually I almost didn't notice. First it was the deposit. Then it was, the florist wants 30% up front and we're a little short. Then it was the bridesmaid dress alterations, which I wasn't even getting because I wasn't a bridesmaid. That part stung in a way I didn't let myself feel for a long time. I was funding a wedding I wasn't standing in. I told myself it was fine. She was stressed. Planning a wedding is stressful. She'd thank me properly when it was over. By month 4, I had put in just over $11,000. I had one conversation with my mom about it. Not to complain, just to mention, carefully, that I was feeling a little stretched. My mom patted my hand and said, "You've always been so good at managing money. You can handle it. Your sister isn't like you." I sat with that sentence for a long time afterward. Your sister isn't like you. What she meant was, your sister falls apart. What she meant was, you don't. What she meant underneath all of it was, you can take it. I went home that night and opened my laptop and looked at my savings account and thought about the condo I was no longer going to be able to buy this year. Maybe next year. Maybe. I didn't say anything to anyone. I just closed the laptop and went to bed. The text came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before the wedding. I was at my desk, eating a granola bar and reviewing a client's quarterly report when my phone buzzed. I thought it was my sister sending another vendor invoice. I picked it up without thinking. "Hey. So I've been talking to my fiancé and his family about the guest list, and we've had to make some really hard cuts. I love you, and this doesn't change anything between us, but we've decided to keep it immediate family and close friends only. I just don't think it makes sense for you to come. I know you'll understand. You always do." I read it 3 times. Then I put my phone face down on my desk and stared at my computer screen for a long time. The quarterly numbers blurred a little. I blinked. They came back into focus. I didn't cry. I want to be clear about that. I didn't cry because somewhere under the shock I wasn't actually surprised. And that was almost worse, that some part of me had been waiting for something like this for years and had simply gotten tired of being surprised by it. I turned my phone back over and read the text one more time. "I know you'll understand. You always do. I thought about $11,000. I thought about $4,200 wired on a Saturday after night because she called me on a Friday night. I thought about every florist invoice, we're a little short, every time I'd said yes because I thought it would matter. I put my phone in my drawer and went back to the quarterly report. That evening, I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, warm and casual, like nothing had happened. I told her I'd gotten the text from my sister. There was a pause, a small, careful pause. She had to make some hard choices, my mom. The venue has a capacity limit. She told me it was 300 people, I said. Guest lists are complicated. Mom, I kept my voice very even. I've given her over $11,000. Another pause. Longer this time. We know how much you've contributed, she said, and we appreciate it, but this is her wedding, it's her day. She should be surrounded by the people who make her happiest. I let that land. And I'm not one of those people, I said. That's not what I said. I know what you said. The conversation ended not long after that. My mom told me to give it a few days and not to make things harder than they needed to be. I said, okay. I said good night. I hung up. I sat on my couch for maybe 20 minutes just looking at the wall. Then I opened my laptop. I didn't do anything dramatic. I didn't send a long email. I didn't call my sister back. I just started doing math. $11,260. That's what I had given, total, between the deposit and everything after. I still had text records of every transfer, screenshots of every invoice she'd forwarded me. It was all there, neat and documented. Because I'm an accountant, I document things. It's what I do. I drafted a short message to my sister. I told her that since I wouldn't be attending the wedding, I thought it was fair to revisit the financial arrangement. I said I'd be withdrawing my support going forward and that I would appreciate a repayment plan for the funds already contributed. Given that the original understanding was that I was supporting a family event I would be part of. I read it back. I changed one word. I sent it. Then I opened a new tab. I had been wanting to go to Portugal for 3 years. I had a Pinterest board. I had done research on the Alentejo region, which is this part of southern Portugal, with golden plains and ancient castles and small towns where people eat nobody is in a hurry. I had looked at flights probably a dozen times without ever booking one because there was always a reason to wait. The wedding was on a Saturday. I booked a flight for that Friday. I didn't tell anyone. My sister's response came the next morning. She called me, not texted, which I knew meant she was angry. I let it go to voicemail. She left one. Her voice high and tight, saying I was being vindictive and cruel, and that she couldn't believe I was doing this to her, that I was ruining her wedding, that she'd always known I was jealous of her. I listened to the whole thing, then I sat with it. Was I jealous? I turned that over seriously, the way I try to turn over things I don't want to look at directly. Maybe, when we were kids, there was something like jealousy. But what I felt now wasn't jealousy. It was clarity. The difference between those two things is that jealousy wants what someone else has, and clarity just sees what's there. What was there was a sister who had taken $11,000 from me and cut me from her wedding in the same breath. A mom who thought I should understand. A family that had, for 31 years, operated on the assumption that I would absorb whatever I was handed and keep showing up. I was going to Portugal instead. My dad called that afternoon. I picked up because I always pick up for my dad. He wasn't angry. Not exactly. He was disappointed, which from him is worse. He told me that family meant choosing each other even when it was hard. That what I was doing to my sister was going to leave a mark on our relationship for years. Dad, I said, she uninvited me from her wedding. She had to make hard choices. Everyone keeps saying that. It's true. She invited 300 people, I said. She had room for every single one of her fiancé's work colleagues, and she did not have room for me. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I don't want to get in the middle of this. You called me, I said. He had no answer for that. We said goodbye not long after. That night I packed a carry-on. I am a light packer. Another thing about me that's just efficient, just practical, just easy, and I had my bag done in 40 minutes. I took my good linen shirt, 2 pairs of trousers, comfortable shoes for walking on cobblestones, a journal I'd been meaning to write in for months. I put my laptop in my work bag. I forwarded my out of office. I had told exactly one person where I was going, my closest friend from college, who texted back good. Send pictures, eat everything. I went to sleep before 10. The flight boarded at 6:15 in the morning. I found my window seat, tucked my bag overhead, and sat down. The seat was narrow, and the woman across the aisle had a lot of carry-on luggage, and there was a baby somewhere 3 rows back, and none of it touched me. I felt like I was inside a glass bubble. Or maybe I was just finally still. We pushed back from the gate. My phone had been on airplane mode since I left my apartment. But before I turned it off, in the car on the way to the airport, I had seen the beginning of a notification from my sister. Just the first few words that appeared on my lock screen before I put it away. You need to fix this before. I put my phone in my bag. We lifted off the runway and the city fell away beneath me and I watched it go. I landed in Lisbon early on a Saturday morning. The light there is different than anywhere I've ever been, softer, more golden, like everything is slightly warmer than it should be. I took a train south, through small towns and open fields, and arrived in a village so quiet I could hear my own footsteps on the street. I had rented a small house through a local agency, white walls, terracotta tiles, a courtyard with a fig tree. The owner left a bottle of local wine and a handwritten note about which restaurant to go to for lunch. I sat in the courtyard for a while and did nothing. That evening, I went to the restaurant. I ordered grilled fish and bread and a glass of white wine. The place was full of local families eating slowly, talking loudly in Portuguese, nobody looking at their phones. I ate by myself at a small table by the window and watched the street outside and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, maybe ever. I felt like myself. Just myself. Not the responsible one or the reliable one or the one who always understands. Just a woman at a table in Portugal, eating good fish on a night that belonged entirely to her. My phone stayed in my bag. Later, days later, when I was back home and had turned my phone back on, I found out what had happened. 89 missed calls, 14 voicemails, dozens of texts from my sister, my parents, my aunt, 2 of my cousins I barely speak to. The content ranged from furious to tearful to something that read more like a press release. The family is very upset by your decision, and we hope you'll reconsider your position. Apparently, without my contribution, the florist hadn't been fully paid. The florist had pulled out 2 days before the wedding. My sister had scrambled to find someone else at the last minute and ended up with someone who, from the photos I eventually saw, did a perfectly fine job, but nothing like what she'd originally wanted. And the entire time this was happening, my family had been calling me, believing that if I picked up, I would fix it. I was eating grilled fish in Portugal. I sat with all of those messages for a long time before I responded to any of them. My sisters were the hardest to read, not because they were cruel, though some of them were, but because underneath the anger there was something that sounded almost like bewilderment. Like she genuinely could not understand why I had done this. Like the question of why had never occurred to her before. I wrote her one response. I didn't send it angry. I waited until I was completely calm, until I could write without any heat in it, because I wanted her to actually hear it. I told her that I loved her, that I had always loved her, that for most of my life I had expressed that love by being available, by saying yes, by absorbing things quietly so she wouldn't have to. I told her that I had given her $11,000 because I thought it would finally make me real to her, real enough to be in the room. I told her that when her text came, the one saying I didn't need to come, the thing that broke wasn't my heart. It was something more like a spell. I had believed for 31 years that if I was good enough and useful enough and quiet enough, the love would eventually be equal, and her text just made it very clear that no amount of being good would change the math. I told her I didn't want an apology. I wanted her to actually understand what she'd built with me. Or rather, what she hadn't built. And I told her that until that happened, I needed distance. I don't know if she understood. I don't know if she ever will. What I know is that I have a photo on my phone from that Saturday, the day of her wedding, the day I was not invited to. I'm sitting at that small table in Portugal, there's evening light coming through the window, and I'm looking out at the street. My friend took it for me later and made it my contact photo. I look relaxed. I look like someone who has just put something heavy down and is seeing, for the first time, how light their hands feel. That's what I was. That's what I am. My sister didn't ruin my weekend when she told me not to come. She handed me the exact moment I needed to finally stop waiting for permission to choose myself. I didn't take it out of spite. I took it because I'd earned it. Every single cent of it. And the fish in Portugal was extraordinary.